book and, quote, unlock the master.
Now, from Wichita's most listened to sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH. This is Sports Daily with Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor.
And a very pleasant Thursday morning to you. It's Sports Daily here on KFH. Tommy Castor. Paul Savage joins me in studio today. Jacob Albracht out today. Jad Chambers producing the program. Glad to have you here with us this morning on KFH. All of the many different ways that you can check out the program today, of course, on radio at 97.5 and 1240 here on KFH, online at kfhradio.com, on the free Odyssey app. You can stream the show live. You can also go back and listen to the podcasted version of the program as soon as we wrap up this morning. Also on our video stream, you can check us out on Facebook, on YouTube, and on X. We appreciate however you listen to or watch the program here today. A lot to get to on the program. We will be joined by our K-State insider, Tim Fitzgerald. At the top of hour number 2, we'll get into everything going on with Kansas State, including an update on the transfer portal with men's basketball. Jerome Tang and crew missing out on a couple of top-tier transfer potential players over the weekend. And so we'll get Fitz's take on all of that and where the Wildcats go from there. We'll even talk a little bit about K-State football as the transfer portal continues in college football as well. Talk about that. Also get into a little bit about the Rashee Rice situation. I know that it was talked about on yesterday's program, but maybe a little bit of an update in that situation down in Texas for the Chiefs wide receiver and a whole lot more. And if we're going to kick things off with the Royals here in just a minute. But first off, Paul, how are you, man? Good to see you.
I'm good, Tommy. Always good to see you. Glad to be on the show with you today.
Glad to be in studio here with you. It's always fun, to be able to do that, be in person together. And so we can sort of, give each other a hard time here in person, which is good.
It is, isn't it? I'm with you on it. Give me a hard one right there. There you go.
Appreciate that.
Let's go.
Good to have you here on the program. And by the way, you can join the program too at any time on the IHOP hotline, 869-1240. Would love to have you involved in the program as we go through the next 2 hours. Like I mentioned, let's get right into Kansas City Royals baseball, Paul. It was a big 3-game series for the Royals. I mentioned it on Monday that I felt like this series for the Royals against the Brewers, the 3-game set, was going to feel a little bit like playoff baseball, even though we're in the month of May, just because of where the Royals stand, knowing that the Brewers, have a pretty solid team. They've got a pretty good rotation, even with the loss of Corbin Burns in the offseason. They've got players and they've got quite a bit of talent on that team. The Royals were able to take 2 of 3 from the Brewers. It culminated in that day game yesterday where the Royals got the 6-4 victory. I thought what was really good about that game, Paul, was that James MacArthur, who's been the closer for Kansas City, over the last 3 or 4 weeks, he struggled as of late. He blew a save on Tuesday night, but he pitched fairly solidly to get the save for Kansas City to take 2 of 3 from the Brewers. The Royals moved to 22-16 on the season. Knowing that they were able to take 2 of 3 from Milwaukee, How do you feel about where the Royals are right now?
I'm feeling better than I have felt in a long time. And I'm referring back to the glory days of World Series championships and that kind of thing. It's been quite a drought. It's been tough. The Royals are one of those teams that it seems like, show me. You got to show me. I just can't fathom, telling me about how good they could be, they might be, they will be. The fact that Bobby Witt's hitting the cover off the ball. And again, by the way, another two-hit game, a home run,
yep.
A walk. I mean, the guy's getting on base like crazy. And as Billy Bean would say in Moneyball, what's the number one thing about a baseball player? Getting on base. And he doesn't care how he gets on. And Bobby Witt is doing that almost 400% with regards to getting on base. And that's amazing. And by the way, this was without
Salvi. He wasn't in the lineup.
Salvi took the day off. You got to do that every once in a while for a catcher. It's not like you're a position player. You got to do that. And so even that's without Salvi now. And it's not like the Kansas City Chiefs took 2 out of 3 from a rum dump.
Yeah, the Royals.
Yeah, it's the Royals. I mean, it's not like they took them from a rum dump. Milwaukee's a good baseball team. I mean, they're 21-15 right now. That's not bad. This is a good baseball team, and this is fun to see. The Royals competitive, my friend. That's the operative word on today's segment that we're doing on the Royals.
The lineup comes out for the game on Wednesday. I see it Wednesday morning, and I'm like, okay, I understand Salvi not playing.
Right.
It's a quick turnaround from a Tuesday night game, that was pretty dramatic at the end. A really quick turnaround to a 1:00 first pitch on Wednesday. It's the day before getaway day, all of that. I understand the rest portion of it. But I looked at that lineup when it came out, and I'm like, man, if they want to take 2 or 3 from Milwaukee, I feel like you got to have Salvi in that lineup. They were able to make it work without Perez playing in that game. And I had been fairly critical over the last few days, Paul, about Vinny Pasquantino, and not necessarily critical, but more of just you need to get more consistent production out of him if you're going to keep him in the 3-hole in the lineup or even the 4-hole in the lineup. And he had a good game yesterday. He was 2 of 3, drove in a run, batting right behind Bobby Witt Jr., the very top of the lineup that drove Kansas City. I mean, Maikel Garcia, 1 for 4. He got on base twice, had a hit and a walk. You mentioned what Bobby Witt Jr. did, and then, of course, what Pasquantino did as well. And Michael Massey, continues to do, what he does as well with a couple of RBIs. So all in all, offensively, the Royals were able to compensate for not having Salvador Perez in the lineup. And you can't, at his age, at 34, you can't expect him to be in the lineup every single day, but you got to have him in the lineup as much as possible. The Royals were a James MacArthur blown save on Tuesday night away from sweeping the Brewers. And that's the top of their rotation that they sent out there on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Brady Singer had another really good outing, 5 1/3 pitched for him. So it wasn't the most elite outing from Brady Singer. He did allow 1 earned run. He had a couple of walks in that game that he allowed, but all in all, it was a solid, I would say, outing from Brady Singer. And, overall, outside of Tyler Duffy, the bullpen really, I think, showed up as well in that game. And so I think that considering where things stand for them right now, and this is the very end. I had this date circled on my calendar for a while. This is the very end, Paul, yesterday's game, of a pretty difficult stretch of baseball for Kansas City. They started the season with a pretty easy schedule. They played the White Sox quite a bit, and then they get into a really difficult stretch. And I thought to myself at the beginning of this 2-week stretch, if the Royals could get out of there at 500 overall, I'd feel okay about where they're at. They're 6 games over 500 at the end of this stretch. What does that tell you about the future prospects of this team?
Well, you never know. It seems like you never know with the Royals. So I'm not going to say, hey, we're headed for a utopia. I mean, Tommy, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying, though, I'm feeling pretty good about this particular team. And of course, with Bobby Witt playing as well as he, but let's not get a little excited.
Sure.
We're in May. Tommy, we're in May.
We've got a ways to go.
We got a little ways to go. The dog days of summer are just around the corner. We'll see how that plays out. But right now, there's all the reason in the world to be really, really happy. I mean, if I'd have asked you, Tommy Castor, the first week of the season, I said, I understand it was an easy part of the season. You were playing some teams that weren't very good. We're not going to be competitive in Major League Baseball. Early in the season, you expected to, get some wins. At least that's what we were hoping for. With the Royals, I'm not so sure we weren't, going to be lumped in with some of those teams. But if I was to say, Tommy, 6 games over, 500 at this point, heading into the middle part of May, I would have said, Tommy, would you be happy with that?
Absolutely.
I believe you would say yes.
Who wouldn't be? Who wouldn't be?
So I guess when you ask me that question, yes, I'm ecstatic that they are. Did I expect it? No. Call me a little jaded if you want, Tommy.
Mm-hmm.
Call me jaded. No.
Yeah.
The answer would be no. I did not expect that the Royals would be as good as or playing as well as they are at this point.
I think that's fair. I think that's a fair assessment, because what have the Royals shown over the last half decade to give you really any hope, going into this season?
In other words, how many times have they broke your heart, Tommy?
What I was banking on in this offseason going into this year was that there would be some kind of marked improvement. There would be something that you could hang your hat on and say, okay, they're making strides. They're better than what they were. They've improved. We can see the improvement. Maybe not as much on the wins-loss column, but, some things that you feel like can be building blocks for the future. Here they are, 38 games into the season, and they're 6 games above 500.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's a long way to go. But if you want to look at this from a glass half full mentality, Paul, they're in a position now that they haven't been in over half a decade, as far as like, it was, every single year, it seems like by the time April is done, the Royals are already irrelevant and nobody's talking about them. It's kind of like they're just there. They're losing games at a large clip. They're relevant now. We're about in the middle of May, almost to the middle of May, and they're relevant right now. Will they be relevant in August or September? Time will tell.
Yeah, we don't know.
Time will tell.
Right.
But I do think that from what I've seen so far this season, they're not a perfect ball club by any means, but I think that they're for real. I think from what I've seen, doesn't mean I'm ready to crown them or anything, but I think that they are for real as far as being a relevant team down the stretch this season.
I think your point is good, and it made me think of this in particular, and that is, in conversations in overall baseball, the Guardians are getting a lot of love.
They are.
Lots
and they're
of love.
A really good team.
And they're a good team. But they are in that discussion, one of the better teams in all of Major League Baseball. They're in that discussion. Now, are they in the same discussion as the Dodgers? Well, the Dodgers are kind of, on their own, at least talent-wise. And of course, they're 26-13, very close to what the Guardians are. But we can see the depth, and we can see the abilities, and we can see everything that the Dodgers have. And I wouldn't bet against them to win the whole thing. I wouldn't at this point. But we discuss, you're 2.5 games out of first place in your division, and for the Royals. Tommy, That's amazing, because we're talking about leading this division as the Guardians, and the Guardians are always in those conversations about being one of the better teams in all of baseball. I'll tell you what you've got. If you're a Royals fan, you just got to be encouraged with that, don't you?
Absolutely. Where I was wrong, and it could change between now and the end of the year, but I was absolutely sure that the only way that the Royals would have a chance to get into the playoffs would be if they won the division, if they won the AL Central. I've been on record multiple times going into this season saying that, because I felt like the AL Central was going to be a weak division. It's the best division in baseball as of right now. I mean, they've got 4 out of their 5 teams. You take the White Sox out, 4 of the 5 teams in that division could win the division. And I think that the Tigers are clearly on the rise. The Twins have talent. Will they be able to put it all together and win the division? I don't know. The Guardians have, I think, established themselves as the team to beat in the AL Central. But I thought that there was no chance at all that Kansas City could get into the playoffs as a wild card team. That's what I thought at the beginning of the season. A month and a half in, they could absolutely at this point make the playoffs as a wild card team. And that I think that's what surprises me the most. It's not only just how well the Royals are playing, it's how well that entire division is playing overall.
Right. Now, I'm kind of just the opposite of you in a way. This is kind of funny in a way, and it's not a big deal. But I'm sitting there thinking, the only way the Royals get into the playoffs is probably through the wild card. And I'm sitting here thinking, racking my brain, thinking of who's winning what division, where each division's at, and who's going to be competitive in those other divisions. And I'm sitting there, so I'm kind of just the opposite of you, and I don't know what that says about my faith. I guess what it's saying about what I believe that the Royals are capable of doing. And I'm sitting there thinking, how can we finesse this thing, get a chance, get into the wild card? And trust me, as a Kansas City Chiefs fan, I think most of Chief fandom would say, something, I'll take that wild card. I'll take that wild card.
I think they would too.
Yeah, that's right.
I certainly, if they do get a wild card spot when the season is all said and done, I'm not gonna bemoan that. I'm not gonna say,
right.
It's not acceptable. We need to win the division.
That's a failure of a season.
I just didn't think that they would be in a position with how talented the American League overall is.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought, okay, because my expectation going into this season, Paul, was that they were maybe going to be a 500 team, somewhere around there.
Well, you're being generous.
85 win team.
You're generous.
That was kind of what I thought coming into the season.
All right.
And I thought, okay, well, that's not going to be enough to win a wild card.
No.
But if the AL Central is as weak as I thought it was going to be, okay, well, they could maybe win the division
whole thing,
with an 80 to 85 win season.
Right.
Well, that's been completely turned on its head because the Guardians are playing great baseball, and then you've got the Tigers and the Twins that are right there with the Royals. So, I certainly didn't anticipate that the AL Central would be as competitive as it is a month and a half in. Again, will it continue that way when August rolls around or September? Time will tell. But as of right now, it was a really difficult and challenging stretch for Kansas City. And they got through it. I don't want to say they got through it with flying colors necessarily, but they got through this stretch of baseball better than I thought that they would, better than what my expectations were. So let's go back all the way to April 19th. Okay. So that was when the Royals started a weekend homestand with the Baltimore Orioles. The Orioles are a really good team.
They're good.
Okay? The Royals had wrapped up a bunch of games against the White Sox. So that's a little bit that's almost a month ago. Okay. 3.5 weeks ago, April 19th. That series, the Orioles took 2 of 3 from Kansas City. Okay. So at that point, I'm like, all right, well, they're already off to a rough start in this tough stretch. They dropped 2 of 3 to Baltimore at home. Then the Blue Jays come to town. The Royals take 2 of 3 from Toronto. Or I'm sorry, they take 3 of 4 from Toronto in that 4-game set. Okay, so they're back on track at that point. Then the Royals go to Detroit, and the Tigers take 2 of 3. Okay, kind of back to even, kind of around there. They head to Toronto. They take 2 of 3 from Toronto in Toronto, okay, to kind of avenge that. Back at home against the Rangers, and it was just, that weekend set that we had last weekend. The Rangers were able to take 2 of 3 from them, okay? Don't feel great about that. But then they're able to salvage everything outside of that blown ninth inning save on Tuesday night to take 2 of 3 from Milwaukee. So they never got swept in this really difficult stretch of baseball. And there were a couple of series that they won over the course of it. I was thinking, okay, if you can escape out of their 500, you should feel pretty good. I think they exceeded my expectations. And now they get into a stretch of baseball. I know they have to go to the West Coast, but they're playing an Angels team without Mike Trout. They're going to be headed to Seattle. Seattle, I don't think, is really making the noise that they made a year ago. And then they're back at home against the Athletics and the Tigers. So I feel like at that point, you can kind of take a little bit of a deep breath, exhale a little bit, and say, okay, we made it through fairly well in a really tough stretch of our schedule.
Interesting. I think that's insightful, and I think you're exactly right. And it made me want to ask you a question as you were going through that. Best team in baseball in your opinion right now?
The Dodgers. The Dodgers are the best team in baseball altogether. And I say that because I'm an Atlanta Braves fan.
Well, you could almost make a case.
You can, but the Braves went to, the Braves went to LA, played the Dodgers last weekend and got swept. And Shohei Ohtani just beat the crap out of them, hit so many home runs over the course of the weekend. I lost count of how many Ohtani hit. The Dodgers are stacked, and I believe that the Braves are incredibly talented, and they could absolutely win the World Series this year. On the road in LA and getting swept by the Dodgers, not a great look. So I'm going to give it to the Dodgers right now.
Right. Well, of course, you could make a case for for the Phillies. You could make a case for Baltimore. But I think you're right. It's just when you look at the early part of that lineup and you go Freddie Freeman and you go Ohtani
Mookie Betts
and Mookie Betts.
Yeah, they're stacked.
And, I mean, come on. Is there a better lineup in the first half of a lineup in all of Major League Baseball? Because I would say that's probably the best one.
And that brings up, and it's not anything we need to necessarily get into today, and we talked about it earlier this week. It does bring up the way, again, the Royals stack the top of their lineup because they've got power in Bobby Witt Jr. and speed and getting on base. They've got power with Salvador Perez and getting on base. I'm a believer, I'm a supporter that there should come a point where Bobby Witt Jr. leads off in this lineup. And actually, you know what? I thought yesterday would have been a really good opportunity to try that out if Salvi is not playing.
Mm-hmm.
Put Bobby Witt Jr. at the very top of the lineup. Have him lead off.
Well,
because he's going to get on base.
Right.
He's got speed. And nothing against Michael Garcia. He was 1 for 4 yesterday. He
getting
had
better.
A run.
I think
better.
He's getting better. He's not there, but he's getting better.
But I do think that knowing what, and I mentioned this the other day, Paul, that when you're the Dodgers and you've got Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani and Freddie Freeman going 1, 2, 3, I mean, that doesn't give a pitcher much of a chance to settle in at the start of the game.
No, it does not.
You could do kind of the same thing with Kansas City and go Bobby Witt Jr., maybe Salvador Perez batting in the 2-hole, Vinny Pasquantino after that. Load up the very top of your lineup right off the bat and don't give that opposing pitcher any chance to get comfortable. Just an idea.
It's a good point.
It's working for the Dodgers.
It's working for the
Braves. It's working for the Rangers.
Yeah.
Those were the 3 teams that I identified stacking the very top of their lineup.
But the Royals don't have a Freddie Freeman, a Mookie Betts.
They don't have but they've got Bobby Witt Jr. and Salvi.
Well,
they need a third? They need a third person. They need one more.
Kind of need that one last one.
It sure would be great to have another bat that can play outfield, another power bat that can come in there.
That'd be nice.
And be that third role. But regardless, a tough stretch of baseball for the Royals that they were able to get out of and take 2 of 3 from Milwaukee. They are on the road on the West Coast. Again, no rest for Kansas City. They play the Angels tonight in LA. We've got coverage of that game right here on KFH. It's a late game, of course, because they're on the West Coast. First pitch and coverage begins at 8:30 tonight right here on KFH. We'll step aside for a timeout. On the other side, the latest on the Rashee Rice situation with the Kansas City Chiefs. It's coming up. Tommy Castor, Paul Savage, Jad Chambers producing. It's Sports Daily. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. It's Sports Daily here on KFH on this Thursday. Tommy Castor along with Paul Savage, and for Jacob Albracht today. Jad Chambers producing the program. If you'd like to join the show, you can call the IHOP hotline at 869-1240. On that IHOP hotline, coming up at the top of hour number 2, Tim Fitzgerald, GoPowerCat.com, our K-State insider. Yes, Paul, what do you have?
I just wanted to say a shout out thank you to IHOP yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
They sent over some breakfast for the staff here at Odyssey Radio. And I'm telling you what, if you haven't been to breakfast for a while at IHOP, go. What they sent over, would you agree it was fantastic?
It was good.
My gosh.
I tried, it was like this breakfast sandwich that was French toast as the outside.
Yeah.
It's like French toast and hash browns and sausage and egg and cheese. They had it cut in fours and quarters.
Right.
And I had 1/4 of it, and it was massive. Even just the fourth of it was massively big.
Yeah.
But the pancakes they brought in, they had a pizza omelet that was incredible. I mean, anytime you can bring in free food for people to try,
Well, I mean,
you're going to be my hero at that point.
And by the way, nobody makes me mention IHOP. I mean, nobody's making me say, hey, bring up IHOP for bringing that food in. I did it on my own. Why did I do it? Because it was that good, Tommy. It was that good.
Well, and speaking of IHOP, the IHOP hotline is brought to you by IHOP. Visit IHOP and try the new If movie-inspired menu flavors like Blue's Dazzleberry pancakes. I think, Paul, that was what they brought over. The pancakes,
I know.
The Blue's Dazzleberry pancakes.
Yeah, I had the egg omelets. You know, the big
had the pepperonis on them.
Oh my!
Like pizza omelets of some
it
kind.
Was so good, Tommy. Now I'm going to go in and get one. Literally within the next few days, I've got to have another one. So
yeah. Well, let's go to the IHOP hotline right now. 869-1240. Our buddy Anthony is on the line. Anthony, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Wichita. How you guys doing?
We're good. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. So I'm kind of out doing a little bit of Ubering, and I just dropped the guy off at the airport. And we were talking sports. We were talking Dallas Cowboys. You know, you like sports. Do you like Wichita sports? Oh, that sounds very familiar. And this guy was telling me about, and I'm glad Paul is on because Paul might know this guy. As we were talking, you know, he mentioned he played football and he played linebacker, I do believe. He said he went to Baylor and had to stop him. I said, do you know a guy named Paul Savage? He said, yeah, I know Paul. Paul, that guy's name is Chris Dole. Do you remember him?
I do. I'll be darned. He's in Wichita. He's living in Wichita?
I just dropped him off at the airport.
Well, obviously he doesn't, because he's leaving already. You know, it's a small world, isn't it? It's a small world. That's really cool.
So I just want to run that by you.
Well, how about that?
Well, Anthony. You're always been a good friend, even back in our earlier adoration of what we were at one point. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for bringing that up and sharing that with me, Anthony. You're a good man.
Hey, I do have a question though, because I was listening to Sports Talk yesterday, and I don't know if you guys caught wind of this, but I was listening to the JR Sports Brief show, and he had his top 5 or top 6 international players. Of course, one of them was Hakeem Olajuwon. And I didn't get to hear who his top one. I think his top one was Nikola Jokic. But an interesting scenario also has sprung up about who are the best athletes, pro athletes, like athletes that play one sport but could play in another sport. Is it? And I think they said the NBA players were the best athletes because there's probably more players in the NBA that could play in the NFL than NFL players that could play in the NBA. So I want to know what you guys' take is on that, and I'm going to hang up and listen.
Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate that. That is a really good question as far as who could play multiple sports. I mean, you think about guys like Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders and, you know, those guys, the multi-sport athletes out there. But as far as like which athlete from which sport translates the best to another one, man, I honestly, what comes to mind first is I think if you play in the NFL, you could probably play in the NBA just because of your size. I don't know if maybe that's the case. I think it would depend upon the position a little bit.
Well,
but like I could think of like maybe a linebacker in the NFL. You know, typically you're going to be probably 6'4", 6'5", built, 260, 270. You could probably be an elite rebounder, I would think, or maybe a pretty good defender on a basketball team. Maybe you can't shoot. I've got no idea about that, but that might translate pretty well.
Well,
you've been a coach. You've evaluated players at a variety of different levels.
Right.
What do you think translates the best?
You name me one player that's played football and then translates into basketball. You don't see it. It doesn't happen. But a lot of players have gone from basketball. I mean, we're talking about who was the tight end for the Chargers, the last one that I can remember, who's going to be in the Hall of Fame tight. And I've gone blank on his name all of a sudden, basketball player. But we've seen many. The Cowboys have had players that the Packers have had players who played basketball, went into football. Happens all the time, but it's not just the opposite. Now, here's an interesting thing, and you're talking to the right guy who might know a little bit about this. There are no guys that I'm aware of that are in a major football Hall of Fame. And when I say major football Hall of Fame, I'm talking about the College Football Hall of Fame, and I'm talking about the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Those are what I'm referring to, two Hall of Fames. But there are no guys that have played
Antonio Gates, is that who you were thinking of from the Chargers?
Yeah. But I mean, but you name me one guy who went from football to the NBA.
Well, I'll name you one guy because I'm sure this is where this conversation came from with JR Sport Brief yesterday, because this just came down yesterday. I just searched it. Devin Funchess makes history, becomes the first NFL player to sign a professional basketball contract.
Well, what kind of contract? What are we talking about?
He played in the NFL for the Panthers.
Right. Okay, I'm with you.
He's 29. He's a wide receiver. He agreed to a deal. I think I'm going to get this name all screwed up. The Caribbean Storm Loranos of the Professional Columbia Basketball League.
Well, we don't even know what kind of pro league or pro team that is. I've never heard of that. I get it. I appreciate that, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about
it's a pro basketball deal.
Antonio Gates played professional football for a professional football team, the Chargers. All I'm saying is
Devin Funchess did. I mean, he played for the Panthers, the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah.
But he's going to play basketball for the Columbia League.
Yeah, but I mean
it's a pro contract.
Well, I mean, for all we know, I can say I'm going to start my own. I'm going to start my own professional basketball team, and I'll sign somebody. But that's not the point. But the point is I think you see what I'm saying. I'm talking about major halls of fame and that kind of thing. We should have somebody that's been. There are none that I'm aware of. However, there are those that are in different Hall of Fames, multi-Hall of Fame careers. And I'll give you one good example is Wichita's own Jim Bausch. Jim Bausch, the Olympic winner, the decathlon winner in the United States Track Hall of Fame and in the College Football Hall of Fame. Track football. Now you have those kind of guys. You've got guys that are in those kind of things where they're being maybe the Basketball Hall of Fame. Wilt Chamberlain. You may not know this. Did you know Wilt Chamberlain is in the U.S. Volleyball Hall of Fame?
I did not know that.
Was a great volleyball player. Great up front. I can imagine how many blocks he would have.
That would make sense. That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, Jim Brown is in the Lacrosse Hall of the U.S. Lacrosse Hall of Fame, and of course the NFL Hall of Fame, and of course the College Football Hall of Fame. He's in all three of those. So we've had a lot of crossover in other sports. And whenever somebody who played football, participates in another sport, Tommy, they have success. They're very successful to the point where some of those guys, and I'm just touching the top of the iceberg on this one, because there are multiple people who are in major Hall of Fames. Now you may say, well, the Lacrosse Hall of Fame, well, that's an athletic deal. I mean, it's a college sport. It's a scholarship, college sports at a lot of schools. It's a major thing back east. So, man, to be good at two sports to a point where you're in their Hall of Fame, the big Hall of Fame for whatever that's something, Tommy.
That tells you
but I
something.
don't know anybody going from football to basketball. And you mentioned this,
Devin
this
Funchess.
new situation.
The final thing I'll say about him really quick is that he's playing in the Columbia League. Okay, whatever. But he is planning on working out and having tryouts with the Los Angeles Clippers and the Charlotte Hornets with their G League team to eventually try to make it to the NBA. So if he's able to do that, good for him. Jad, did you have something you wanted to jump in with?
Well, I was going to say that the first thing when I think of multi-sport athletes, and honestly, nothing comes to mind because a lot of them don't leave the sport. But if you want to talk about something that translates to any sport, it's conditioning.
Absolutely.
Well, that's true.
Absolutely.
And there is basically no athlete better with conditioning than soccer players.
Yeah.
There really is.
We've seen the Kansas City Chiefs this offseason signed a rugby player, very highly respected, highly touted rugby player. To try to cross over. We've seen soccer players become primarily kickers in football, but that sort of thing happens, from time to time. Hey, there's an NBA player, guy by the name of, I believe it's J.R. Smith. I think that's right. Who is playing college golf right now. He had eligibility.
That's right.
You're right.
I knew. I saw the story. That was a while back.
But he's older. I mean, he's got to be like in his late 30s, maybe early 40s.
That's right.
He's playing college golf now. Trying to make that happen.
Saw the story.
There's a lot of crossover with athletes playing golf and that sort of thing.
The reason you don't see a lot of the crossover, though, is just because, especially with football and basketball, there's a lot of specialized skill involved, a lot of finesse, a lot of specialized skill. The kind of stuff that maybe doesn't translate that well to a lot of other things.
Okay, I've got one for Jad. I'm going to put Jad on the spot. This is a little bit of knowledge. Soccer Hall of Fame has a lot of great athletes, a lot of great owners, a lot of great coaches. Would you agree with that? It's a great Hall of Fame with who's who of basically United States soccer. Correct, Jad?
Sure.
Name Jad doesn't know.
I have no idea.
He's like, whatever, whatever you say.
I was just going to say, okay, Jad, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot. I hate to do this, but it might make for good radio. But with that being said, give me there's one man who's in both the United States Soccer Hall of Fame and the NFL Hall of Fame. Would you name that man?
Oh, I would have no idea. I would gather it's a kicker.
Tommy may not know, but Tommy, you would figure it out if you just thought about it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I would almost guarantee it's a kicker, but I can't think of who.
If I had 30 minutes
to think
about it, I probably could figure it out.
It's a contributor. He's not an athlete.
Well, then, okay.
How about Lamar Hunt?
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
Lamar Hunt is in.
That's a trick question.
That is.
We're talking about multi-sport athletes. Paul asks a trivia question about Lamar Hunt.
Yeah, about a guy who had enough money to buy his way into a Hall of Fame.
Oh, come on! Look at what he's done for soccer.
Is it untrue?
In the United States?
Those are good things he did, but is it untrue?
It's not untrue.
Well.
I didn't say it was a bad thing. It was just it's not untrue.
We wouldn't have the Super Bowl if it wasn't for Lamar Hunt. We wouldn't have the Kansas City Chiefs if it wasn't for Lamar Hunt.
Right.
Like, there's a ton of contributions.
Oh, yeah.
But you're not wrong. He was wealthy, and so he was able to make all of that happen.
Well, thank you for that.
Money will get you a long way.
Oh, you've noticed, huh?
Money will get you a long way. Speaking of the Chiefs, and we didn't even get to Rashee Rice in this segment, there's a little bit more detail, some different reports coming out about this situation that he dealt with punching, allegedly, a photographer outside of a club on Monday morning.
Right.
We're not exactly sure if that even happened now at this point. It's still under investigation. Regardless, it's been a weird offseason for Rashee Rice. Mm-hmm. When we come back, we'll touch on that briefly, but then also the Chiefs have a visit today with a free agent wide receiver, maybe because of everything going on with Rashee Rice.
I'm with you.
We'll talk about that and a whole lot more on the other side. It's Sports Daily on KFH. Welcome back, everybody. It's Sports Daily on this Thursday here on KFH. I'm Tommy Castor, Paul Savage next to me, and for Jacob Albracht today, Jad Chambers producing the program. This segment of the program brought to you by our friends at Crestview Country Club. Paul, it's been a beautiful week weather-wise outside of Monday. Obviously, we had bad weather Monday, or the potential for it. The rest of this week has been just beautiful, awesome, warm but not hot, light wind, sunny skies. That's going to continue for the next couple of days. I'm sad because with it being so beautiful outside, I've not been able to get out and play golf this week at Crestview, which I typically would try to do on a week like this week. Unable to do that, but it's a perfect week for it.
Oh gosh, and by the way, Monday I'm driving by Crestview, and there's still some golfers. Now this is early enough in the day where guys says, it's going to be bad weather. I got to get my golf in.
Oh, for
but
sure.
I happened to be out driving right by Crestview. I thought to myself, now there's some hardy golfers right there. Those guys are serious, which I think said a lot about Crestview.
Well, yeah.
Now Crestview is going to make sure nobody's in danger. And this was, like I said,
they're not going to put you out there with a tornado warning.
This was in the morning. This was, probably 10:30, 11 o'clock. And you're getting some golf in, which was, it wasn't bad at all if you remember Monday. But that's I'm with you on that, because Crestview is such a great place. And I don't know if it was you or Jacob that I mentioned the other day. Sometimes we forget to mention Crestview and what they offer in terms of I've actually been to some seminars there.
Sure.
I took some acting classes there. Believe it or not, there was a guy who was putting on some classes for acting it, and he rented some rooms out at Crestview Country Club. And let me tell you, they treated us like kings and queens.
As an event venue, they do a phenomenal job out there too.
It was phenomenal.
So, I've gone to wedding receptions out there, and I've gone to different other kinds of events and dinners and things like that.
I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what Jacob and I talk about quite a bit, is that I'm a golfer, so I primarily use the club to play golf. But they've got a pool, and my wife and kids are going out there and swimming during the summer. And then we're going to events and parties and weddings and things like that. So they've got all that covered, even if you don't necessarily play golf. I'm just sad that as this week has gone on, I'm looking out the window of my office and it just looks beautiful. And I just think, man, I wish I had a tee time right now at Crestview. But we appreciate their sponsorship of the show. And thanks to them for all of that. Check them out online or give them a call to find out more about becoming a member out there. By the way, the Wichita Open is just over a month from now out at Crestview. We're going to be involved with that also here at KFH. And so we're really looking forward to being involved with the Wichita Open out at Crestview. And I know that they're getting geared up for that. It's a huge event every single year here in the city. So we'll have more on that to come as the weeks go on. Paul, before we wrap up hour number one, very quickly, I mentioned Rashee Rice before the break. I know you and Jacob talked about it on yesterday's show about the allegations that he was involved in some kind of assault outside of a club, allegedly punching a photographer. And I believe it was early Monday morning when this happened. Police are investigating it. I did read a report yesterday from the Dallas Morning News that there are a couple of witnesses that have come forward saying that nothing happened, but I do believe the investigation continues. And, who knows until this investigation is done. I just know that, again, this is not a very good look for a guy who already is in quite a bit of hot water during this offseason.
Hope that's true. Hope what you just said is true, that there was nothing to this. But this is a great lesson. If there's nothing to this, what a great lesson to be learned by Rashee Rice. And that is, don't go to these kind of places, because this is where trouble happens. I mean, where you are, the potential for this kind of thing to happen, whether it actually happens or not, it goes up significantly. Stay at places, a fine restaurant or a nice family oriented venue of some sort for food and entertainment. That's where you got to be. You can't be at certain places. The problems can just rise from there. The chances, the potential rise from there. Avoid those.
Absolutely.
It's part on you, Rashee. I'm not giving you a lot. It's on you a lot.
You have to take responsibility for that.
That's right. You got to.
And I'm thinking, and I don't know Andy Reid, and I don't know the front office, but there's only so much of a leash you can give a guy, and that is assuming that these allegations end up proving true, before you have to say, look, one time having a really bad lapse of judgment, one time we can maybe move forward with that and figure out a path forward. But when it starts to become a pattern, of bad decisions and lapse in judgment and that sort of thing, that makes
Right.
it a little bit more difficult to move forward from.
Right.
So hopefully it turns out
Yeah.
that, those witnesses are, true and that nothing did happen. We'll find out. I have no idea. That just came out yesterday. So we'll definitely keep our eyes on that.
Yep.
And by the way, Zay Jones, who is a free agent wide receiver, he most recently played for the Jaguars for a handful of years. He is visiting the Chiefs today. I don't know if that's directly in relation to the Rashee Rice situation.
Gotta be.
Or if it's, I think the Chiefs probably needed a wide receiver anyway after the draft.
Yeah.
There aren't a lot of free agents out there, but he's scheduled to meet with the Chiefs today.
Probably both. Probably a little bit of both, I'm guessing, because you've got to get better. I mean, there's not a Chiefs fan in existence that wouldn't say we've got to get better. The Chiefs have got to get better at receiver. No one would say they're set, they're pat, they're good to go. Nobody will say that.
We still don't know what kind of suspension Rashee Rice is going to be facing for the incident on the roadways in Dallas that took place a few weeks ago. We don't know that yet. And then, this whole allegation of assault is out there too. So it's going to continue, I think, to be interesting for Rashee Rice. And it's definitely been a tough offseason for him and for the Kansas City Chiefs in regards to his situation. And we'll see if they end up signing Zay Jones. Time will tell. I have no idea. We'll figure that out and we'll stay with it. That's going to wrap up hour number 1 here on the program. On the other side, we'll start hour number 2 with our buddy Tim Fitzgerald. GoPowerCat.com will join us to talk all things K-State. It's coming up as we kick off the 10 o'clock hour. Tommy Castor, Paul Savage, and Jad Chambers at Sports Daily coming right back.
Now, from Wichita's most listened to sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH. This is Sports Daily with Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor.
He's got all the insight of what you want to know and maybe some of what you don't want to know. Here's K-State insider Tim Fitzgerald.
All right, everybody. Hour number 2 of Sports Daily underway here on KFH 97.5 and 1240. Streaming online, kfhradio.com, on the free Odyssey app, and on our video stream, Facebook, YouTube, and on X. Tommy Castor, Paul Savage in for Jacob Albracht today. Jad Chambers producing the program. The IHOP hotline at 869-1240. We're joined by our buddy Tim Fitzgerald. GoPowerCat.com on the IHOP hotline. Fitz, how you doing, man? Happy Thursday.
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you boys?
We're good. Glad to have you here as always on the program. Not a great recruiting week in the transfer portal for Jerome Tang. Let's start there. The two major targets for the Wildcats, Cliff Amori and Khalif Battle, both finding different schools other than Kansas State to attend next year. And those were two top targets for Jerome Tang and his staff. Where do things stand right now with the Wildcats, and what is the reaction after both of those guys end up committing elsewhere?
Well, I think they knew Amori wasn't going to pick K-State. I think his price tag went beyond anything K-State would offer, and honestly might have gone beyond the realm of believability, because apparently North Carolina offered him $2 million a year in NIL, and he didn't take it. That's just outrageous.
Yeah.
If you ask me. I don't get that. I mean, he averaged like 10-6, 11-6 last year. And I think K-State hung around in that just to see if there was other motivations than just money. End of the day, though, he ended up at Alabama. Battle's a little bit different. They felt really good about him, and Gonzaga got him at the last second. It's something that happened to him last year. They're regrouping. They've got some guys coming in over the next 2 weeks, some really good players potentially coming in. As the numbers in the portal of top players dwindles, it could get pretty competitive, but K-State hasn't spent that much of its NIL budget to this point because it has missed out on some players. So they might be in a position to get some of these guys that are popping back up, maybe recirculating through the transfer portal or just got missed the first time around. But I know this, they've got 5 openings on this team. They need to start locking up some players.
Yeah, they do. And it always seems to happen when, a lot of teams will get a, at least one late commitment from a transfer portal player that ends up being a pretty big commitment for that respective team. So that could certainly still happen for the Wildcats. Yeah. But as far as areas of need, I mean, I know with 5 openings, they need quite a bit, but how do you rank them as far as like prioritizing really what they need to be going after?
Well, they need at least 2 bigs, possibly 3 to, fill out the depth. So there might be an opportunity here to, go get some guys that maybe aren't frontline guys and they realize it and can fill out a roster. But that's their main focus. They still want a scoring wing to replace what they had in Kaluma or Battle. It's not out of the question Kaluma comes back. So, that'd be a complimentary piece to Arthur, but that they just got to get some momentum back in the portal. And once they do, I think they're going to be okay, but they got to get that recovered.
Paul Savage here, Tim. It's always good to talk to you. You're one of my faves, big boy. But with that being said, I got a question. So this week we find out that John Calipari, to make the move from Kentucky to Arkansas, which he was smart to do. His days were numbered at Kentucky.
Right.
But anyway, that was a smart move. But we find out that, find out some numbers on Calipari. One of them is that he's going to make an extra couple $1 million a year. He's pushing what, 10 million, 11 million, something like that. I couldn't remember the exact number, but he's pushing like 10 or 11 million dollars a year in salary. But the number that really jumped out at me, and I remember it very vividly, was he has been guaranteed $15 million a year in NIL money. Basically, you can't even have 15 guys for $1 million each. What are you, 12 guys on scholarship? And is that still the number? That's still the number. So you're looking at basically, $1.2 million per player just on the money that is going to be guaranteed to a Calipari. So in other words, you can come to University of Arkansas, walk out of there a 4-time millionaire. I mean, you're going to make about $4 million a year. That's if they don't raise you. To stay out of the portal or whatever the case might be. Where are we with K-State's numbers? Are we in the $15 million area like Arkansas?
Oh, heck no. And most programs won't be. It sounds like it got escalated into the, around the country, the $5 to $6 million range. K-State is just below that, but, still pretty competitive. They're not actually losing players because of the NIL budget. Maury, yes, but I think everyone was astonished by that number for the player. $15 million for basketball NIL is absurd. And from what I'm told, it's causing some real issues on the internal issues because I don't know that football with all those players has that much money. Arkansas football is taking it on the chin at the cost of basketball. I find that to be an interesting choice when football is really the more important sport that you're just going to trash and move on to hoops because of John Calipari.
You mentioned, Fitz, going back a few minutes about Arthur Kaluma, and that I know that's been up in the air for quite a while as far as really what the path forward is going to be for him. You said it's not out of the question that he comes back to K-State. I'm guessing at this point it's probably not likely still, though, right?
I don't know that that's true.
Okay.
I mean, he's exploring his professional options. It just hasn't gone well. He's not showing up on much. He's not getting many, looks. But that doesn't preclude him from going overseas or something either.
Sure.
But he went into the transfer portal on the last day just to cover his options. I mean, what if K-State, now this was weeks ago, what if K-State does land all these guys? What if they start filling up their roster and playing time dwindles? So he wanted his options open. I know K-State's still in communication with him, and we'll see. I'll be honest, I'll be a little bit surprised if he does come back, but I think that's still in the works, and I think K-State will have a scholarship set aside. You know, even if they start landing a bunch of guys, they'll have a scholarship set aside for them.
You know, there's this big basketball tournament that's going to be played next year. It's a partial NIL type experiment where kids are going to actually get paid themselves for playing in this basketball tournament. I believe that tournament's in Las Vegas. Is that right, Tommy? It's in Las.
Yeah,
I believe it's in Las.
Yeah.
And my question was, did K-State have a chance? Were they ever courted or talked to about playing in that particular tournament? Because it's kind of a who's who. Boy, I would have loved to seen a program like Kansas State playing in that basketball tournament. Were they ever in the running for anything like that?
I haven't seen anything. I'll be surprised if that tournament takes place. That is not anywhere associated with the NIL. I mean, that is just pay for play, which is going on, but this is just blatantly that. There's no name, image, and likeness involved. It's just, here, come show up, here's the money. And that's really where the NIL is going to eventually have to get some guardrails. You can sell your name, image, and likeness. You shouldn't be getting paid to play. That's professional sports. And I don't know if the NCAA is just watching everything collapse, watching Rome burn, but all of us that cover sports, enjoy sports, love college athletics, knows that this has got to get under control. This is outrageous.
Well, yeah, I mean, the NCAA, I think, has very quickly become irrelevant. They've been irrelevant for a while, and it's, obviously just, continuing as the weeks and months and years go by. Fitz, I want to ask you about Jerome Tang here for a second, and I don't mean for this to be a negative line of questioning about the way the offseason has gone for Kansas State, but I certainly didn't really see it going this way as far as the number of players entering the transfer portal. And then, what seems to at least be so far kind of a struggle to get, transfer portal players in, really outside of Doug McDaniel is probably the most high profile guy. Do you think, and I'm sure you don't know what's inside Jerome Tang's head right now, and there's a long way to go in the offseason. Do you think that there's any sense of frustration from Jerome Tang or, I don't want to say panic, but maybe nervousness about the way that the offseason has panned out so far?
If there is, he's not showing it.
Okay.
He remains Jerome Tang upbeat, and I think they're feel confident about some of the things coming up. But there's some weird things going on with kids right now. They have so much power; they'll literally tell coaches, "Yeah, I'm getting on the plane," and they never show up, or they just tell them, "Yeah, absolutely, I'm coming on my visit. I promise I'm coming on my visit. I'll be there next week. I'm not committing on this visit." Boom, they commit on the visit, and that it's just chaotic right now for some of these schools. And K-State has fairly good success when they get someone on campus. Those two guys would be outliers. So they just need to get people into town, show them around, and show them the team and what kind of availability for minutes they have. There's a couple guys that went into the portal. One in particular, Day-Day Ames, that they would take back.
Sure.
But his quote agent and his family have decided he's worth far more than he was getting paid at Kansas State, and I think he's already finding out that that money isn't there. And he was in a pretty good situation at K-State, but it sounds like the agent and family got a little bit greedy and are using Day-Day to try to cash in, and the cash just isn't there for a mostly inexperienced point guard.
Well, that's a lot of players are going to find that out over the coming next 2 to 3 years, that's the way it works. I think that's going to happen more and more often. Well, Fitz, let me move over to football a little bit. Spring football is over. You're now getting ready to get into summer workouts and summer conditioning and that kind of thing. Overall thoughts on where K-State football is right at this very moment?
When you say you're getting ready for summer workouts, please, not me. No. I'm gonna work out some Mexican beer into my face.
There you go. That's why we love you, Fitz.
I think they're in really good shape. They've had a good portal stretch here for what they needed. They still got a few spots to fill, but it sounds like they found a multifaceted offensive weapon to be the backup running back, but also play receiver and be a return man. And Dylan Edwards, who it's just an enormous pickup for the K-State system. And him and Avery are so tight. They got a frontline linebacker if he can stay healthy, and Alec Marinko out of New Mexico to replace Jake Clifton, who's going on a Mormon mission. They feel good about that. They still have some other pieces they want to add. They recovered their own recruit who was in the portal and came back, and Malcolm Alcorn Crowder. And that young man out of Butler is just massive. And they were trying to replace him because he couldn't get into school, and then he got everything taken care of. So now he's going to get into K-State. So they've still got a few needs, but they have done really well in that. And I think they feel really good about this football team. They'd like a new offensive line piece just to kind of be a backup to improve their depth. And they really would like to find an experienced quarterback to help Avery Johnson and be the backup there. But, boy, that's a hard sell. That's a really difficult sell. We'll see if they can accomplish that. But I think coming out of spring and into the portal period, moving into the off-season workouts, they feel really good about their team. And they've got a lot of young, really promising talent that I think will emerge in this season to be playmakers for this program.
I saw as far as preseason betting odds, obviously Kansas State, the preseason betting favorite to win the new Big 12 next year. And then right behind them, Utah and Kansas tied at second as far as betting odds are concerned. I think really fits what has been, at least from my opinion, the most remarkable thing during this offseason for Kansas State football is the retention of players. And I didn't realize just how few players from Kansas State entered the portal. In today's era where players are leaving left and right, different programs, really Chris Kleiman and his staff did a phenomenal job of retaining the guys they had on the roster.
I think football and basketball, at least at K-State, if not, as a trend across the country, are using the NIL in different ways. Basketball is using it offensively to go find guys, to get big-time players, to get aggressive and pay guys to come in. Football's doing the opposite and playing defense. They're giving money to those guys on their roster who have proven themselves. They save some money to go get recruits, but notice they're not throwing around huge numbers in football to attract this player or that player. They're really focused on retention with their NIL, and it's effective. And I think that was a brilliant move by K-State because, you can go out and get a bunch of players, but do you build a team? Do you have a locker room? Do you have the elements of an entire program that you need to be successful on the field? And that's what K-State's focused on is making sure the players they have are paid in the right way, including Avery Johnson, to protect him from eventual poaching. They've already tried, but if he has a big season, they'll be back. And I think K-State donors are prepared to take care of that.
We're in this time of the year where you can ask dumb questions because we got a lot of time to fill on the radio.
That's every day.
That's every day. There you go.
That's my life.
Yeah, that's it. That's it exactly. But anyway, one of the interesting things is we've got the first year coming up, and it starts with football right around the corner. You've got Arizona State, Utah, Colorado coming into the Big 12. Fitz, I just got to ask you. I mean. Some of those stadiums, I'll bet you haven't ever covered a game at. You probably have been to a couple of them, but are you looking forward to the new teams coming in? And on top of that question, here's the real kicker. Do you see any other teams being added in the future? Whereas I would love to see Washington State and Oregon State added to the Big 12. They're very similar in stature, prestige to a Kansas State. I don't think there's any problem in the world to having, the Big 12 with representation up in that part of the country.
At this point, I don't see that happening. They need to sort out the ACC because if the Big 12 can get a bigger footprint on the East Coast where most of the population is, that would move the needle more for them. We'll see.
Okay. All right.
But Paul, what was the first question? My brain doesn't work anymore.
Well, I mean, I
If
was
you're excited about the new teams coming into the Big 12.
Well, I was talking.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Have you been to every one of
And-
those stadiums for a football game, for instance?
No, not those new stadiums. I have been to Sun Devil Stadium for a bowl game, but of course they've redone that since the dark ages when I was there. Of course, I've been to Boulder a number of times. I love it out there. And keep in mind, K-State didn't go to any of the new teams last year. So all 8 of the incoming schools over the last 2 years, K-State hasn't played recently at any of those. So it's going to be fun. They're going to BYU, and they've got some really fun road games. BYU, Colorado, and Morgantown this season. That's the mountain tour. You add in an Arizona school, and you're on the full mountain tour. But I'm fired up, and I think these are great additions. Utah thinks they're going to come in and completely dominate. I think they're going to be shocked at the level of investment they'll see week in and week out around the Big 12. They're not going to go play at Cal where there's 7 people in the stands and most of them are studying.
You got that.
They're going to be shocked. They think they have the most dominating environment possible, and they do have a great environment from everything I've heard. But boy, wait until you have to go to Ames in November, and there's 60,000 people willing to suffer frostbite to support their Cyclones. You go to Oklahoma State, and they got these paddles whacking away on the pads over there that are just really distracting, and that's an intimidating place. And of course, K-State is quite a pit to go into, and the students are right behind your bench. They're going to see a level of support from fan bases they didn't know existed when they were out west. And I'm excited to see how they perform. They might dominate the Big 12. That's a really good football team, and they might have the best coach in the conference coming in. But I think they're in for a little shock at some of these environments. And I think once they make a tour through the Big 12, they're going to realize these schools are a lot like us. This makes sense. We're going to college campuses. We've got fan bases that are invested, and we're not visiting LA, San Francisco, and Seattle. I mean, that's not a college atmosphere, if you ask me. So I think that it's going to be really fun. And half this conference of 16 teams is new within a 12 to 24 month period, depending on how you look at it. And that's a huge shock to the system. But if the ACC cracks open, there's going to be 4 new teams from out east. So just hang on and see where all this goes. But this is going to be a really fun season in the Big 12.
Last question for you, Fitz, before we let you go. I'm going to take off my radio host hat and put on my investigative journalist hat. And so I know you're a journalist, so you can appreciate this. Asking the hard-hitting questions. I want to get to the bottom of this because, it's something that I think is really important and the people want to know. 48 hours ago, the X account from Kansas State Athletics tweeted this: "We're proud of the house we built, investing $356 million in game-changing facilities since 2012, privately funded with no state or tax dollars." I'm sure you're familiar with that tweet. Mm-hmm. My hard-hitting journalistic question to you is, did you hack into their Twitter account and type that yourself? That's what I want to know.
Well, what's funny is I don't think people understand that this isn't just something I dreamed up. This is at K-State. And I think this is a sign that's probably going on most campuses. That video was about continuing your donations. It was for the Micah Hearn Scholarship Fund.
Yeah.
And they play that "We're proud of this house we built" before every football game. And this was a version of that with the facilities. And I think that most schools are probably seeing a drop in donations because fans are giving to NIL.
Sure.
And that's a problem. They need more donations, not, just distributed in a different way. So I think they were trying to generate that. But at least I got a free daily delivery video out of that, reading tweets I received over that whole situation.
I do appreciate the answer to your question because you totally dodged the answer. You didn't actually answer my question, whether or not you hacked in and tweeted it yourself. I'm going to take that as a no. You did not do that.
No.
But still, that was pretty good content. And I thought about you when that tweet came out. And it is, I mean, even though, yeah, they're getting donations and all of that, it is a little fun rivalry banter back and forth, between K-State and KU. So a little, another level, I would say, to that.
Tommy, I got to tell you, I saw that tweet and I went, well, there goes my day. I then quote tweeted, "This is the way," because I'm a Star Wars nerd. But yeah, it made for a fun day of back and forth with some KU accounts. But I just want to say, not everything is about you, KU. It's really not.
There you go.
They really need to get things rolling with funds coming back into the athletic department, because fans are really focused on building up K-State's NIL.
This is what I love about an in-state rivalry, and it makes it so much fun when little things like one tweet from the official athletic department account can get everybody riled up for at least a day or two. So that always makes it a lot of fun. What do you guys have going on over at GoPowerCat.com today?
A podcast just went up. My daily delivery's up. We're going to have a kind of a breakdown of where K-State sits basketball with scholarships. We've got a bunch of fun stuff coming up here, but yeah, today was podcast day. So whether you want to watch it on YouTube or listen on a podcast platform, the PowerCat podcast is up and ready for you. And the daily delivery was about 24/7's rankings of quarterbacks by conference, and two of the top three in the Big Ten were Big 12 quarterbacks last year, and neither were the quarterback first team all conference quarterback. So I find that very intriguing, how much better they got simply by transferring to another school.
You can check all that out at GoPowerCat.com. Fitz, we appreciate your time as always, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, boys. Great to talk to you.
All right, there goes Tim Fitzgerald, publisher, GoPowerCat.com, here on Sports Daily. On our way out, let's do a giveaway, Paul. I got official approval and authorization from our friend Jacob Albracht this morning, who's not on the show, to give away some HTO.
Oh, beautiful.
So I'm going to give away some HTO.
All right.
We'll do 2 free T cards for caller number 2 right now on the IHOP hotline, 869-1240. That's going to be good at HTO East, West, and in Derby. By the way, they've got the new Strawberry Passion iced tea right now, which I've heard is phenomenal.
I don't know that it's eligible for the Derby store. I don't think he's been.
It is, yeah. East, West, and Derby was what he told me.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure.
East, West, and Derby. 2 free T cards.
All right.
For caller number 2 right now on the IHOP hotline, 869-1240. Jad will get that during the break, and we'll be back in a few minutes. Tommy Castor and Paul Savage at Sports Daily coming right back. On your way to work and want to keep listening to Sports Daily even after you park the car with the free Odyssey app and Odyssey.com, you can just download the free Odyssey app or visit Odyssey.com and search for KFH. Download the Odyssey app today to get started. You can also go back and listen to podcasted versions of Sports Daily, including that interview with Tim Fitzgerald. We always appreciate Fitz coming on the program, giving us an update on everything going on in the world of K-State sports. Congratulations, Steve. He is our winner of the free iced tea from HTO. We'll do that again tomorrow and every day right here on Sports Daily. Paul, let's talk a little bit about the NBA playoffs. Of course, the Knicks and the Pacers, that series going on right now. And game one had a lot of controversy. So did game two as far as the referees are concerned. In fact, it just came down a couple of hours ago from ESPN that the Pacers had submitted 78 instances of incorrect or non-calls to the NBA that they felt put them at a disadvantage in both of those games against the New York Knicks. So the Pacers have officially complained. I don't know. I mean, clearly it's not like you can go back in retrospect and change anything that happened in those games. But I kind of, after watching, the games and watching the highlights and seeing examples of the bad calls on the court, I don't blame the Pacers for being upset.
Well, the Pacers have a great, reason to be angry. And there were two calls that were just egregious, in my opinion, having watched them both like 10 times now in that first game in New York. And it was just, they were horrible calls. One was a kicking of the ball, which was not even touched by a foot. It was a hand. But the visibility, if you look where the official was on the floor to the action of the ball, a body was blocking his vision. He guessed at it. And one of the first rules of being an official is you don't make a call. And I'm talking football as well as basketball, baseball. You don't make a call unless you see it. And that makes total sense. He didn't see it. He made the wrong call. It was a turnover. And not only was it a turnover, it was a giving up of an easy basket because momentum of the players was going to the home or to the New York basket. The ball was batted about almost half court. All the players on that side of the court were still Pacers. It would have been an easy basket. So not only was it losing the possession of the ball, but for sure, easy 2 points. And that's a big deal. That was a big deal. And of course, the screen, the moving screen, he stood there for a full count almost. It was just horrible. And I understand it. Now, it just so happens they weren't reported. I guess it's the overall atrociousness of the second game, and so they're adding them all.
Yeah, I mean, they submitted 79.
Yeah, but they weren't going to
instances.
submit the first game. They decided for a distraction, but it was quite a distraction. And some are saying, well, it's a homer deal. It's a New York. Yeah, it's a Knicks home venue type situation. I don't know if that's the case or not.
I mean, I do think that there are occasions, and one thing that comes to mind is there has forever been this perception, and it might be accurate in some ways, that when opposing teams play in Allen Fieldhouse against the Jayhawks, that Kansas gets a friendly whistle. Like, I've heard that for my entire life.
Well,
but I think so. I do think that there is some legitimacy because the referees are only human, and when there is a raucous, hostile crowd, that can maybe sometimes influence on whether or not a whistle is blown in one way or another. I'm not saying that it's a conscious decision that a referee makes, like, okay, well, I'm going to make this crowd happy or I'm going to make them angry. The emotion of it, and it shouldn't be that way. But again, these referees are not robots, like they're going to be impacted by the circumstances surrounding them. I'm not trying to excuse referees, and I'm not trying to excuse, because 79 instances, that's a lot. That's egregious. If it were a couple of things that were even critical in nature, but it was only a couple or a handful of them, okay, people make mistakes. Referees aren't perfect. Umpires aren't perfect. It's part of it, the human error, function of everything. But when there are 79 that the Pacers feel like were questionable or non-calls or incorrect, okay, at that point, that's probably something that the NBA should look at. Again, it can't change anything in the past. The past is the past. But moving forward, if the league can try to make sure that their referees are doing a better job, I don't exactly know how you do that. 79 is a lot.
It is. And I know that there's 2 or 3 of them that are pretty legitimate, if you ask me. I'm not sure about all 79 of them, but with that being said, on particularly that first game, here's the Pacers. They have a chance to get out of New York with a win.
Yeah.
With a split first 2 games. That's monumental. I mean, that's when you're playing against a guy like Brunson and the cast of characters that play for the Knicks. I'm telling you, that's a good basketball team. They have a shot at winning it all. I'm not saying they will, and I don't think they will. They might, but I don't think they will. There's some other good teams, but that's a good basketball team. And now you go home to your home court and you're down 2 games. You got to win 2 games. They're almost like must-win games, because if you split those games, it's 3-1 going back to New York.
That was a big concern of mine going into this series. I thought the Knicks would be in this position after 2 games. I thought they would be up 2-0. I didn't think that there would be all these terrible calls from the referees, but I did think the Knicks would fairly handily win this series. And the reason I thought that, it's not because the Pacers aren't good. They are, but they exerted a ton of energy in beating the Bucks. And I know the Bucks didn't have Giannis and a lot of their star players in the previous round. But
that's right.
Those 2 teams I don't think care for each other a whole lot, and a lot of emotional energy I think the Pacers put into that series. And I thought that maybe they would run out of gas a little bit against the Knicks. It's been a little bit different of reasoning why the Knicks are up 2-0 through the first 2 games at home. I don't think the Knicks are talented enough to win the whole thing this year. I think the Celtics will probably still represent the East in the NBA Finals, but it's been pretty impressive with what New York has done with Jalen Brunson, who continues to look amazing. I know he had an injury where he missed a little bit of time in game number 2, but returned, and I think should be okay moving forward. Here's my question for you, though, Paul. Going back to the referee controversy in this series, Rick Carlisle, been around for a long time. Knows
good coach.
NBA basketball.
Good coach.
Probably almost more than anybody in the league right now. Veteran coach, long-time NBA guy. He got ejected in game 2 because of everything going on with the referees. He was quoted after the game saying that he believed, and I'm paraphrasing him, that he believed that part of the reason that there were so many bad calls was because the NBA wants to see a team in the New York market go all the way. Like, he's talking about small market versus large market. He says small market teams deserve an equal shot. They deserve a fair shot no matter where they're playing. Do you buy into that? Do you think there's a bias based on the large market of New York versus the small market of Indiana? Is it a chip on our shoulder? Nobody wants us there for the Pacers, and the NBA is going to favor the large market team?
I think that there is a bias there, that's what they prefer, but I don't believe that anybody would take any action to see that.
It's hard to connect those dots. That's why the calls were wrong.
I'm saying that, yes, I think that if you're an NBA official of some sort, or the commissioner of the league, you'd like to see a team from New York play a team from LA in the finals. I think there's no doubt about that. You go to where the population is, and that helps your ratings, and both are usually, if that was the case, marquee basketball teams. And Brunson is one heck of a player, by the way. I mean, he's one of those guys. He doesn't look the part. He doesn't look athletic, but you know what he can do? He can shoot the rock.
Yeah.
He can shoot the 3. He is a really good, and he's tough. He's tough-minded. He's tough mentally. And I like that about Brunson. He's a heck of a player. But, Carlisle, when he got kicked out, he did that on purpose to make a point.
Sure.
And he got kicked out with 15 seconds left in the game.
Yeah.
There wasn't much time at all. And then he walked to the tunnel and the game's over. But he did that to make a point. The point was, tech me up, give me my tech, run me on the second one. I want out of here. I want to make a point that this is what I think of what you guys have done. And, of course, he got his way. There was no other way to do it. But Rick Carlisle has been around basketball for a while, NBA basketball for a while. He knows the ins and outs. And I believe he has sort of a reason to believe what he believes. I'm not faulting him at all on what he's seeing, because I think I might be seeing it. I think I'm seeing it, Tommy.
Well, here's the other thing I want to point out really quickly is that, were the referees a factor in both of these games?
Well,
absolutely.
Well, yes.
Absolutely. I mean, we all know that, like, the kicked ball, for example.
Particularly the first game.
The kicked ball should have been reversed and it wasn't. Like, that's an easy thing to point out.
But that's not a reversible play.
I get it, but
Right.
that's not that's something that was unfortunate that happened. They definitely played into the outcome of the games. That being said, though, it's not all on the officials. The Pacers allowed 65% shooting in the second half in game one against the Knicks. And then the Knicks shot 67% in the third quarter of game number 2.
Right.
So they've got to figure out
They've got some problems
defensively what they're going to do as the series shifts back to Indiana. And Jalen Brunson is a huge factor in that, obviously.
Right.
They've got to try to figure out some kind of strategy to limit his production as the series shifts back to Indiana. Let's go to the IHOP hotline now, 869-1240. Earl is on the line. Earl, good morning. What's going on?
Good morning. Just point out, even though the Knicks shot 65% in game one, 2 phantom calls at the end of the game cost the Pacers 2 possessions where they were in a position to win the game.
Absolutely.
Look, the elephant in the room, and Tim Donaghy in 2007 was an NBA official who is in prison now for betting on games. That was before gambling became a part of the leagues. Look, man, it looks like a duck. It walks like a duck. That darn screen they called at the end that cost them after the phantom kickball, that official had to be looking for something, anything, to blow his whistle. The integrity of the game is at stake. It's not small market, big market. That's the way he guised it. But there's an integrity problem now that gambling is such a big part of sports.
I don't know, Earl. I mean, I have a hard time thinking that this was that. I mean, I think that I think there can be a scenario where the referees have just been bad, right?
And both things can be true at once. And I know you say, hard time believe it. Did you have an easy time believing that Tim Donaghy was throwing games for betting?
Of course, I had a hard time believing that. The difference from then to now is that, I mean, I imagine, I don't know this for sure, but I would imagine that there are much more stringent guidelines and guardrails in place that the NBA has to prevent that sort of thing from happening, especially now that sports wagering is a huge deal.
Yeah. Earl, the problem I had with believing that story was that he could keep it secret. You can't. How do you keep that stuff from somebody finding out?
Tim Donaghy kept it secret for 2 years.
Yeah, but it came out.
Who just got kicked out of the league for betting on his own games. That stuff went on for more than a year. I mean, you're talking an overnight deal. Look, it smells bad when you watch those games. And I'm sorry, I've been a sports fan. I'm in my 60s, right? I've watched sports my life. In the last couple of years, I scratch the heck out of my head where some of these calls are coming from. And they all can't be just bad officials. Come on, boys. We can't look into the eye of the storm and say it isn't really happening. Haven't we learned anything from the 20 and 22 from all the made-up stuff we were being sold? There is a problem with the integrity of the game.
Well,
and that's what Carlisle was doing.
Yeah, I have a problem without having knowledge of it or without their proof. Hey, if it's proved that you are right, Rick, I'll be the first one to jump on the bandwagon with you. But I mean, I just think we've got to be careful that we accuse anybody of something that we just don't have knowledge of. I'm sorry. I'm with you. And I think there's the potential for this. Oh, brother, and
this is what real quick before we let you go, Earl, and thanks for the call as always. You think about what happened with Jonte Porter, and he was caught betting a couple months ago, banned from the league for life. And people will say, well, that just shows that the integrity of the game is compromised. My counter to that is, no, that just shows that the guidelines and the restrictions and the rules and everything in place to keep the game's integrity intact is working.
Right.
Because they're weeding out the people and they're finding the people who are doing this, sort of thing.
Yeah.
From a referee perspective, it's a little bit different, but
Earl could be right.
I get it. He could.
He could be right.
But I've got no idea.
He's got a good point.
But I do think as of right now, it's okay to just say, yeah, the officiating in the Pacers-Knicks series has been bad.
Horrible.
It's been
Horrible.
flat out bad. Doesn't mean that the integrity of the game has gone. It just means it's been bad.
Right.
Rick Carlisle knows that, and the NBA, they've got to try to find a way to make it better as the series shifts back to Indiana.
Good call, Earl.
We're going to take a break. We're going to come back, and we'll tell you what else is happening in the world of the NBA playoffs and a little bit of an update on the remaining series going on right now. Tommy Castor, Paul Savage, Jad Chambers, Sports Daily, coming right back. Each and every morning here on Sports Daily on KFH, the staff enjoys a delicious cup of coffee from our friends over at Prairie Fire Coffee.
Right here.
Paul, I that's got to be what, cup number 4
5.
this morning?
Probably
5?
5 in 2 hours.
Is that
and
about,
that's a big cup too, by the way.
Is that about average for you? I mean, how many cups of coffee do you drink a day?
7, 8.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a coffee maker that it makes a cup at a time.
Okay.
And I probably have 7 probably.
Are
But
you
I
the
like
kind
my
of guy,
coffee.
can you drink coffee throughout the entire day? Or is there like a cutoff?
I cut it off. I
Okay.
cut it off at about noon.
I can't do coffee in the afternoon. And it's not a caffeine thing. Like, I'll drink caffeine in the afternoon, but for whatever reason, as soon as like lunchtime hits, I've got no desire to drink coffee at that point.
Yeah.
You know, I'll switch to iced tea or I'll switch,
Right.
whatever. But it's got to be a morning cup of coffee.
Yeah.
I know people that will have a cup of coffee at like 7 o'clock in the evening after
Right.
dinner. Like, that's not something that I can do.
Home or here, I have a cup of coffee, and I have a cup of coffee here in my hand on this show all the way through, don't I?
You
I
do,
mean,
absolutely.
I don't have a break.
Yeah.
I'm the same way at home. So but then, noon rolls around and I'm done. But I'll tell you what, we have one of the best coffees right here, Tommy.
We do.
This cup of coffee right here is delicious.
Big thanks to our friends over at Prairie Fire Coffee
Prairie
for keeping
Fire.
us stocked up
They
each
do.
morning
That's right.
with our coffee fix that we need here on KFH. Real quick, what we're looking at as far as the NBA playoffs tonight, I mean, there's a lot out there. There's, a couple of games that I'm really looking forward to. Of course, you've got the Mavs and the Thunder. The Thunder lead the series 1-0. The Celtics and the Cavs. Boston leads that game
No,
1-0.
don't get too excited about those. Those could be dogs. The first game was
The Thunder
dog.
and Mavs game, I think, is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to that
All
one.
right, we'll see.
I think the
If first
Celtics
game
roll
wasn't-
right over the
yeah,
Cavs.
The
Yeah.
Celtics, it's a done deal.
But it's been fun to get behind Oklahoma City as they,
Oh, it is.
roll through the playoffs, and we'll see if they can continue that.
I want good games.
Game number 2 tonight, taking on the Dallas Mavericks. We're going to take our final timeout. On the other side, we'll let you know what's on the network coming up next on Sports Daily.
Save big money on everything for your projects. Now at Menards. We have it all for garden and landscaping essentials. Visit our outdoor garden center today and update your backyard space. Grid Accents lattice panels have a timeless design with an innovative design that's simple to install and requires almost no maintenance. Save big on lattice panel options at Menards. View our entire selection of garden center products today on Menards.com.
Save big money at Menards.
Truck Staff is the premier provider for all of your towing needs. Fifth wheels, gooseneck, and bumper pull hitches with brands like B&W, Draw Type, and Kurt. We also sell and install brake controllers and airbags to lift your squatty rear end. Interest-free financing makes it a snap to get your boat, horse trailer, or camper safely down the road. For all of your hitch needs, stop by Truck Staff today at 427 North Washington.
Tricked out, decked out, check us out. Truck Stuff. Go hog wild, pit barbecue. Hog wild, get some for you.
It's $5.99 barbecue time. Hurry to Hog Wild for a complete barbecue meal that's only $5.99. Terry Caldwell, Hog Wild partner and general manager in Wichita at Maple and West Street, has all the details on this smoking deal.
Get a Hog Wild sandwich loaded with our award-winning meats like pulled pork, pulled chicken, or hot wings, plus your choice of a classic side and a drink for just $5.99.
Upgrade your sandwich to beef brisket for just $1 more. Join us for lunch or dinner. You can also order online at GoHogWild.com. Hog Wild Pit Barbecue. 6 locations in Wichita. Also in Derby, El Dorado, Hutchinson, and Salina.
Go hog wild, pit barbecue. Hog wild, get some for you. But don't be late, we close at 8. Patterson Legal is the way to go. Call 550-0000.
I'm attorney Tyler Patterson. Big rig accidents can be devastating, causing big injuries and even death. Special laws apply to these types of accidents. If you've been hurt by a big rig, call Patterson Legal Group today. Our experienced team will fight to get you the compensation you deserve. In a wreck, need a check? Call us today.
Patterson Legal is the way to go. Call 550-0000.
Skies will begin to clear up a bit this afternoon, and we'll have a high of 78.
Weather brought to you by Express Employment Professionals. If you're ready for a new job, let Express Employment Professionals help you. Express is your one connection for summer jobs in a variety of industries. Visit expresspros.com.
Attention all patriots. This is Jason Hansen, former CIA officer and security expert. I have an urgent message for anyone who's concerned about their financial future. In a world filled with economic uncertainty and geopolitical turmoil, it's never been more important to have a rock-solid plan for protecting your wealth. That's why I'm inviting you to a special financial briefing this Thursday. During this exclusive summit, you'll get proven top strategies for safeguarding your hard-earned assets and securing your financial independence. We'll cover everything from diversifying your portfolio to creating a fail-safe emergency fund. Don't leave your future to chance. Call my friends at Advantage Gold today at 800-741-GOLD to register at no cost whatsoever. In today's uncertain times, it's critical to have a solid plan in place to protect your finances and secure your future. Call 800-741-GOLD now to register for this 100% free summit. That's 800-741-GOLD.
Paid for by Advantage Gold. Performance may vary. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Always consult your financial and tax professional.
The KFH Studios, powered by Devon James Injury Lawyers. Call 888-8888.
That's 888-8888.
College softball here in town. The opening round of the American Conference Tournament, all taking place at Wilkins Stadium on the campus of Wichita State. 678 fans on hand. Number 4 seed Wichita State taking on number 9 seed UTSA. No problem for the Shockers. A 13-0 win in the opening round. Shockers center fielder Addison Barnard, unanimous all-conference first-team pick. 3 home runs. She was 4 for 4 at the plate. Drove in 5 of the 13 runs in that 13-0 win. Barnard with 90 career home runs in her Shocker career. That ties her 8 all-time in the NCAA record books. All right, on to the second round this afternoon for Wichita State. Number 4 seed Shockers taking on number 5 seed Tulsa. And that will be at Wilkins Stadium. That game at 2:30 this afternoon, as the winner of that game will advance into the semifinals of the American Conference Tournament right here in Wichita. I'm Ted, the Sports Head.
The #1 rated sports radio in Wichita is 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Wichita's most listened to sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Well, you heard Ted the Sports Head mention it in his update. American Conference softball at Wilkins Stadium continues today. It's going to be beautiful. We talked about playing golf earlier. It'd be a great day to get out to the softball stadium and watch some American Conference softball. Definitely do that today. On the network, Jim Rome follows us at 11, Bob and Jeff locally at 2, Zach Gelb at 4, JR Sport Brief at 6, and then a late game on the West Coast, the Royals in LA taking on the Angels beginning at 8:30. It was fun, Paul. Glad to have you here.
Had a great time. Let's do it again one of these days.
That sounds great. For Jad Chambers and Paul Savage, I'm Tommy Castor. We will see you back here tomorrow on Sports Daily.